Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome you to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about the wireless warehouse with our friend Jim from Lanham Associates. I know that we've enjoyed a lot of webinars in the past from Jim, and this one's going to be great, I'm sure, as usual. Couple pieces of housekeeping before we get started. First, we do record this and all of our webinars, so if you want to watch it again or you want somebody else in your organization to be able to see it, just go onto our website, enovia.com, and it will be up by the end of the day, the recording will. Also, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into that question box. We will get them called out and answered for you. So, Jim, without further ado, I will hand it right over to you.
Thanks, Abby, and thanks for the nice introduction. Hi, everyone, and this is something new. I hope that you see on your GoToWebinar panel that there is a PDF file that I uploaded, or actually Abby uploaded for me. I made a PDF out of the slides I'm going to use so that you can take some notes along with the presentation today. And I think I'll try that more going forward, so hopefully you can download that. I believe you just click on it and then start the download process. And so if you want to, the couple slides we have to start with are introductory, so you've got time to still get that done until we get to the meat. So, okay, well, I see that there's several of you that are familiar with who Lanham is, so let me briefly just introduce us. For those of you that may not know us, Lanham Associates is an ISV, or an independent solutions vendor, that creates solutions to extend the nav application into areas of supply chain that Microsoft has not and probably will not do. We have been working in nav since the mid-90s. We have sold a lot of software, we have a lot of awards, and we have a lot of customers, and that's really kind of the key thing. We are all about nav. And our products do extend into the areas of supply chain. There's a couple of new ones on here that you may not have seen before. Address verification, which is part of our shipping solution, known as eShip, and inbound container tracking was also introduced right after Directions, which is the NAV Partner Conference this year, and part of the at the users group down in Tampa, which was just awesome this year. And so those are both available. They exist as extensions for those of you that are looking at 2017. Extensions is a new technology that allows us to create our solutions for nav, and they don't live inside the database in the same way as the older object merged type of solutions. It's a nice footprint for upgrades and migrations. Will be much better in the future. So I don't want to talk about those too much today, but those are two new products, and they're both existing as extensions. Inbound container tracking is also backward compatible in the traditional object merge style for 2009 version 5 and forward. So if you're interested in more information about those, of course, you can always contact me with email. My address will be up here shortly later on. Today we're talking about ACE warehousing, which is right there in the middle, and we're going to do some PowerPoint, and we'll actually look at the product as well. By the way, thanks for joining us today. I used to be on the partner side of this, and I would attend webinars that other ISVs would broadcast or promote. And the description of the webinar and the actual webinar never really match. And I have to tell you, that's one of my kind of pet peeves. If you're going to tell me you're going to invite me to a party, and don't tell me it's not a costume party and then everybody else has got costumes on. So when we presented the information, we basically asked 3 big questions, and we're going to stick to that today, and that's what our agenda is. So the first question is ACE warehousing a good fit for you? And the second one is, what is ACE warehousing versus ADCS, which is Automatic Data Collection Systems, which is a module inside NAV from Microsoft. And we'll talk about some of the enhancements that we've added into the way warehousing works as a benefit of adopting ACE. So we'll definitely answer those 3 questions today as advertised. So I'm making some assumptions this morning. First of all, at some point in your warehousing life, you've decided that you want to make a change to wireless warehousing. That's assumption number one. And now you've begun your search. And the first questions that you kind of face when you look at the products that are available in the nav channel are there's some integrated solutions and there's some standalone solutions. And I'm trying to create a fairly objective list of the pros and cons of both. And quite honestly, there are pros and cons when you consider both sides. So let's talk about what an integrated solution is. Well, first of all, it's integrated by meaning it's built inside nav, using tools that exist for developers like us to create solutions where basically we're using everything that exists inside nav. So that's what we mean by an integrated solution. And the pros, you can kind of read the list there, and I'll talk a little bit about them. Is we believe that having no new interface for users to learn is always a good thing. The look and feel of any elements that exist inside the nav regular user interface is familiar to them already. So filtering and all the kinds of activities that we normally do inside nav extend into this, of course. Generally, the integrated solutions are real-time. They're updating the database as we do activity, in this case on a handheld device, or, of course, inside regular nav. So that gives us a little bit better access to information about our inventory status and about orders. Of course, it means that there's a single system that is your system of record. We don't have external databases or multiple systems. That means that we generally don't have data synchronization issues. The reality is that even nav data sometimes gets fouled up at the very ones and zero level. When you introduce the complexity of synchronizing data between external systems or disparate systems, now you increase the risk of getting those ones and zeros fouled up. And so and that creates problems. And so by having everything inside nav, you're minimizing at least the possibility of data synchronization issues. Generally speaking, we also find that the solutions that are inside nav are a bit more cost-effective than those that are created outside of nav and integrated. Of course, there's a downside too, and we would be unrealistic if we didn't present that as well. The first one listing then is we have to play by the rules that exist inside the ERP system, and this is actually multifaceted. I had a conversation recently with a customer that was using an external warehousing solution, and they could do a lot of things with inventory that don't affect the balance sheet, and they were used to processing certain things and quite literally breaking what you would consider to be certain accounting rules. For example, FIFO. If you've got FIFO costing and you want FIFO inventory movement, well, in an internal system like nav, it's going to enforce FIFO. FIFO isn't FIFO maybe, it's FIFO all the time. But if you've got an external warehousing solution, it may not be quite as rigidly enforced. So that's just one simple example. And some of the processes may kind of impact the way things work in the warehouse. The way we have been doing it, in air quotes, is not necessarily going to be something you can do inside an integrated system. And in some cases, you could make an argument that there's limited WMS or warehouse management functionality inside an integrated solution. For example, we don't do anything with transportation management. And some of the tier 1 or larger applications do have transportation management as part of their WMS offering. So although we have added some things into the way the nav warehousing application runs with ACE warehousing, transportation management, for example, is not one that we've looked at, and that would be actually kind of a big thing. So there might be some things that you may need that don't exist inside one of the integrated solutions. Now I'm going to build the full slide here. The standalone solution, or the one that needs to be integrated, you can imagine the list is somewhat the opposite, and that's true. So the cons on the integrated solutions versus the standalone are generally the pros here, and the cons are the opposite that way. So I'll just kind of leave that slide up there and let you read through that, and you can kind of imagine that what I said on the other slide is just kind of the opposite here, and I think that really kind of holds true. Okay, so that's really kind of the list of things that you need to consider when it comes to an integrated versus a standalone solution. You have to just kind of ask yourself, do we have features or do we have needs that go way beyond what the integrated solution, or what the, let's just speak ACE warehousing at this point, that ACE warehousing has. So, and if you do, then you may need to look at one of the other more robust standalone solutions, and that generally are a bit more expensive as well. So, okay, so now let's go to talk about just kind of base nav. Like here's another assumption that we are making today. There's really 4 levels of warehousing when we think about warehousing, and these are blown out into nav in various ways, and you can really start with thinking of the shelf number on the nav item card or item page, item table, whichever makes sense to you, and the fact that we have a shelf number identity which could be extended to a printed pick ticket, that's beginning warehousing. And it's not very flexible, of course, and there's not much you can do with it, but it at least identifies where someone can go find something more quickly. We have a small electronics distributor that has thousands of parts in these little plastic part bins. They've got a very small warehouse. It's only about 5,000 square feet, but they're using the shelf number to identify where to go find things. Capacitors, resistors, all those little things, and it can be quite difficult for a new employee to try and find things. So the shelf number works just fine for them. That's the beginning. So.
Jim, yes. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure we were seeing your slide correctly. I do see the title 4 levels of warehousing, but it was blank. Now I see 4 wall inventory control. Maybe
there you go. That's correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to build the slide.
Wonderful.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks. Okay, so and that then is really what we call the beginning level is 4 wall inventory control. It's a very, very basic way. We know it's out there somewhere. We don't necessarily know exactly where. Maybe we don't need to. And then we start with the beginning, which is the shelf number. And now we move on to the next level, which is at least identifying a fixed bin. And in nav, there's multiple ways we can do that. As I said, the shelf number on the item card, that's one way. The next way is to move up to identify that we're going to track things by bin. We don't get a lot of functionality there, but we at least know where the item is. We put it away into that bin, and we tell the system where we put it in which bin. And when we ship it, we take it out of that bin. And there's some limitations around that, and this is not a conversation for that topic today. That's a little bit deeper topic, but this is the starting level of where we can start using additional bin functionality. Then we move up into really what we call nav advanced warehousing, and this is where we're using what we call directed pick and put away. We have a floating bin, which means that the bin may or may not contain the same item all the time. And we have generally identify what we call forward picking zones. So this is a larger warehouse where we may have bulk storage of product on pallets up above, and that's what most of us are looking for moving to wireless for. And we're in that stage. So we identify the warehouse in different ways, and we start to turn on a lot more of the advanced functionality inside nav. And then we have, this is full nav advanced warehousing in its nth degree, and that is where we're tracking everything everywhere, including lots and serial numbers. And I know that there are some of you perhaps that have that requirement in regulated industries. You have to know exactly where lot number 27 of a particular product is, exactly which bin it is, and you need to track it all the way. The good news is that nav can allow you to do that. I feel sorry for you if you have to, because I know that can get really complex, but nav allows you to be able to have that functionality. And so that's the level that we live in, this bottom blue box for the most part, and the bottom kind of green box as well. We can do directed full advanced warehousing in the directed pick and put away environment, and not have to worry about lots of serials, or we can go tracking everything everywhere. And that's really the area where Nav Advanced or ACE warehousing lives. Now, hopefully I'm also assuming that you're familiar somewhat with the terminology on this document. This is a classic document that's been around really since the Nav, the 4.0 days, and I just keep using this slide over and over again because it just works. And this describes the activities that exist inside a Nav Advanced Warehouse. Hopefully, again, these terms are familiar to you, and you understand that when we move into Nav Advanced Warehousing, we turn on warehouse documents, where now we're not receiving on a purchase order. We actually create what we call a warehouse receipt, and we receive against that warehouse receipt. And the put away activity is getting product put into a bin, and so on. So hopefully you have an understanding of some of these basic terms and have seen some of these activities before, and this is not new to you. If this is new to you, then follow along as best you can, and reach out to me later, or to Innovia, of course, and one of their warehousing folks can help describe what these look like for you. But this is where ultimately ACE warehousing lives, in a full Nav Advanced Warehouse, and our goal was quite simply to take and make these activities possible on a wireless device. It sounds simple, but there's a lot more to it than that. Okay, so what does it mean from a setup perspective? This is a picture of a location card, location page, inside Nav, and we work with our gold warehouse from a demo perspective, and this is what your location card would look like in a full Nav Advanced Warehousing solution where you want to enable ACE warehousing. There is one checkbox here which is blank, and that is the put away worksheet checkbox. That one is optional in the advanced warehousing, and we'll talk about that one in just a sec. Now, when we do this, you turn on or you enable certain activities inside Nav that I've got listed here, so that we already talked briefly about the forward pick location. This allows us to identify that we have items that we have where normally we pick from, and we have bulk storage typically for our backstock items. And so we generally bring inventory from our bulk locations into our forward picking, so you're turning your inventory in the way that you want to, usually the oldest first and those kinds of things. And when we turn on an advanced warehouse, the forward picking becomes enabled to us by using what we call bin types. On the put away side, this enables us to be able to use what we call put away templates. The template is the business rules that we can define that tell us or suggest to us where to put inventory when we have new inventory being received. You can go all the way up to full capacity planning. So if I define the capacity of a bin and I know the exact dimensions of my items, including the pallet height, then Nav can be smart enough to say, if I've got 8 pallets worth of stuff, I can put 2 pallets in this bin because that's the capacity, and then 2 more go somewhere else, and so on. You can move up to that if you choose to. You don't have to, but it is something that's available. This also opens up multiple units of measure. We'll see that today. So if you use multiple units of measure, and there's good reasons to do that, it allows us to have multiple units of measure stored into a single bin for efficiencies perspectives, and we'll talk about and we'll see how that operates. And then finally, it opens up what we call warehouse classes. Warehouse classes allows us to designate, for example, a particular item needs to be stored in a freezer that's a minus 40-degree freezer. And so through the marriage of the data, when we put things away, we'll only be allowed to put that item into that minus 40-degree freezer, and so on. You could have a high-value cage, for example. Working with a customer right now that is a firearms dealer, and they have items that need to get put into a certain cage, and so through the warehouse class, when putaways happen, they'll only be allowed to put them into that cage. So not only do we have business process and physical process, we get to marry the two of those together. And so that's enabled when we turn on a full Nav Advanced Warehouse. Now, the good news is all these things are available, but also the good news is you don't have to use all of them to their nth degree. For example, in the warehouse classes. If you have no need for that, then you don't have to turn that on. And you'd only want to turn that on if you actually had that need. In the bin capacity, if you don't want to go to that level, you don't have to. So you can use a NAV advanced warehouse in a very simplistic way and have it set up very simplistically and still gain the benefits, potentially the long-term benefits if you grow into it. So there's a lot of good reasons to continue to move into advanced warehousing. I know that there are times when people get a little bit nervous about it, but you can set it up in a very simplistic way and still take advantage of the advanced features as needed. So that's the kind of the prerequisites, and that's the starting point of where you would need to be in NAV warehousing in order to leverage NAV or ACE warehousing. Okay, so that takes us to ADCS, Automatic Data Collection Systems. What is that? ADCS was developed by Microsoft, and it's a module inside the standard NAV price list. And it is essentially a toolkit that allows people like us and partners to create a more robust wireless warehouse solution. Out of the box, it comes with, or it supports, the activities that you see in the large blue box on the right. We do putaways, we do picks, we can do movements, we can take physical inventory. Those are the basic activities. And there are some screens, and the screens on the left-hand side, this is a picture of the mini form list. Mini forms are the screens on the handheld device that the users interact with. And these mini forms, as delivered, you can see the list right there. There's about 7 or 8 mini forms that come out of the box, and that's it. So the anticipation was that the partners would then take this and build out all the rest of the activity that a customer would need. And so that's what ADCS is, basically a toolkit. It also does a few other things that give us the connection to the database and that kind of activity and set up rules. It allows the communication between the handheld devices through the wireless network and security and that. So that's the basic plumbing that we needed. Well, it turns out that it's actually a little bit more difficult to create this solution than anticipated, and so that's how we got into the ACE warehousing. We were really kind of approached to create something that was more off the shelf and could be employed pretty much out of the box. And we have many customers that have done it completely out of the box. Some customization is generally required, but it can go be up and running in a very short period of time if you accept what is there. So first of all, ACE warehousing is from Lanham Associates, of course, and we did use the Dynamic Nav ADCS tools to create it. The ADCS plugin, we talked about that, is what allows us to connect the database to the handhelds, or excuse me, I should say NAV to the handhelds. The mini forms are the handheld screens that we interact with on the handheld devices. We have built those out. Of course, it is real-time and embedded in the application. We talked about that in the earlier slide. And it enables, essentially, a wireless, and I want to say virtually paperless warehouse. I used to say paperless, and someone called me out that if I have to print a label and put it on something, I'm not really paperless. So, okay, I'll give you that. So a virtually paperless advanced warehousing activity. So they're all enabled and ready to go out of the box. There are a number of modules that make up ACE warehousing, not part of the conversation today. If you have more interest, then we can drill down deeper with Innovia. They know our warehousing application very, very well, and your warehousing consultants from Innovia can cover that and determine which modules make up the solution that you need. But there are a number of modules associated with it. So let me build this out completely here. All right. I told you that along the way we have learned a little bit about how warehousing works, what customers want, and so I'm going to talk about what a few of the functional enhancements are that we've added. Some are very subtle from a user interface perspective, but a lot of power, and some are less. So first of all, right as of today's count, there's 152 of the many forms available on the handheld device. Now, will you use all of them? Probably not. But we have built out at least that many depending on what you need, which functionality you need. You would use one or more of them. When you create a put away document inside Nav, and you create take a pick document inside Nav, essentially what we're doing is we're creating an activity that says go get something, which is the take, and go move it somewhere else, which is the place, right? On a put away, it's get it from the receiving area, put it in a bin. On a pick, it's a get it from a bin and take it to shipping. When you create them inside Nav using not using ACE warehousing, you actually have to register both sides of the activity. You see both sides. You've got to say, yeah, I got it, and then you got to go put it, and when you put it away, you've got to say, yeah, I put it there. Well, we thought that was kind of extra work, so we automatically register the other half of the transaction. On the put away, when you pick up the stuff and take it to the bin, we say we're done, it puts it away for you automatically. So nice time-saving, less scanning feature there. Lot tracking and serial tracking was not enabled with base Nav ADCS, and so we've enabled that at the warehouse level if that's necessary. The split line functionality. When you're putting something away, if you get to the bin physically, if the bin that was suggested, if you're using suggested put away, if the bin is physically full for whatever reason, and you need to put the product away, we allow you to what we call split the line and say, look, I put 10 of these in this bin. I couldn't get them all fit into that bin, so I put 10 or 20 or 30, whatever, into the bin next door or to another open bin. The key here, and this goes to kind of a design philosophy, is we wanted to make it easy for the users to do the right thing, which is to update the system. Nav warehousing is very, very literal, and if you don't have the inventory in a particular bin logically, it's not going to let you pick it from that bin, whether it's physically there or not. So we want to make it easy to do the right thing. If it's hard, users won't do it. They'll put it away into a different bin, and they'll say, forget it, doesn't matter. And then later on, you have major issues. So split line allows us to make it really simple to say, well, I really did. I put 10 here, I put 10 there. If you allow the change, take, or place bin function, if a user knows that inventory is in a different location, if you've got the same inventory in multiple bins, and for whatever reason it's easier for him to grab it from a different bin, you can allow them to change the bin they're taking it from or the bin they're putting it into. Now this next one, the optimal picking path, it's a very subtle thing. It's just one field on the bin contents record when we set up our bins, but it can be quite powerful when it comes to efficiency. The two most expensive transactions in the warehouse are changing the battery on the handheld device, because that's never just go grab a new battery. It's go to the battery, change the battery, go get some water, go to the restroom, and then get back out to picking. So that's a lot of time down. The second most expensive is just literally walking or driving around. So we want to be able to define a path that is the most optimal walking path. And you can do that when you first create your bin structure logically inside Nav. Knowing how data is sorted in SQL Server, you can create your bin codes such that that path is the right path as you walk through the warehouse. But then when something changes, it's actually quite tedious to make changes to that bin numbering sequence. You've got to empty the bin logically and then change the code and then put the stuff back in there. Not a big issue if you're changing one or two bins, but if you've added 4 new aisles or something, that can be quite tedious. So we've added a column in that data record, the bin contents record, called sorting path, called bin sorting, and then when we sort the pick ticket on the handheld device, we walk a person through using that optimal path. It sounds like a very simple addition, and it was, but it's a very powerful and efficient or time savings tool. Dynamically create putaways, movements, and physical counts. This is a big difference. In base Nav ADCS, everything I do initiates or starts inside the Nav client. So if I create a putaway, I have to go into the Nav client, create the putaway. Typically then if you're not using something wireless, then you have to print that putaway document, and then that's what gets executed out in the warehouse. But all that has to happen inside the Nav client. We found that there's certain activities that you would likely prefer to do dynamically on the handheld device, Let's create that put away. Let's create that movement and cycle counts or physical counts on the handheld as needed, and then be able to execute them. And so we call that the dynamic activity, and we've enabled that. Here's another key one: perform physical counts during operations. And I'm running short on time, of course, already. But basically, when I do a physical count, I have to freeze my inventory inside Nav. I have to go out and do my count, and then I have to go update that count inside the system. And I can't do anything else. I can't do any shipping activities while I'm doing that counting. Because of the fact that we are time-stamping records and we know exactly when certain activities happened, we've enabled us to be able to do physical cycle counts and shipping at the same time. So mathematically, here's the example. I have 10 pieces in a bin. I create an order on a pick ticket for 2 of those pieces. I release the pick ticket. So at the same time or a similar time, the warehouse manager wants to cycle count a particular row. And so he says, let's cycle count this row, and I create a physical inventory, warehouse physical inventory for that row. And at the time I created that, the pick ticket is out there, but it hasn't been registered. So we still have 10 in that bin. So the count in that bin is actually 10 when I create the physical inventory. That's what the counter should be able to find. Well, in the meantime, the picker now goes and picks those two and registers that pick document. So now physically I have only 8 items in the bin. The counter comes along behind him, counts. He counts 8, which to the system looks like a negative adjustment of 2 more pieces, which now we've understated our inventory. But because we timestamped, we keep track of that. We can see that the pick was completed before the registration of the physical count. We'll marry that up and we'll say, hey, he really should have only found 8. He found 8. Perfect. So that's the way that process can work, and it allows you to not have to shut down for the weekend and do your cycle counts or your inventories. You can go ahead and ship and count at the same time. Oh, I see. I doubled that lineup. So that's the next one. I'm allowed to add items during physical counts. If I find something in a bin that wasn't there or the system didn't think it was there, I can add that item into the physical inventory. We've added an extensive bin content lookup menu. So if I need to look for an item on the handheld, there's a lot of activities that I can do based on that content lookup, but that's also been added. We've enabled mobile receiving, so I can receive on the handheld device and not just have to use the nav client. There's really good reasons to do it still using eReceive, which is one of our products. And if time permitting, we'll talk about that one. And finally, license plate activities. Now, I'm going to do another webinar soon on license plating. That's a longer conversation, but we have added in the concept of a license plate. And let me define what that is. Essentially, a license plate is a data element that is an additional field that's added, and it allows me to know what is on that license plate. A license plate can physically be a pallet. A license plate can be a bale of sugar, 500-pound bale of sugar or flour. It can be a drum or any vessel physically that has a barcode on it. And that number is unique and allows us to know what is on that. Now, typically a license plate can also be manipulated throughout all the activities in the warehouse. After I receive and create the license plate, I can then move the product into a bin using that license plate. Typically, multiple license plates can exist in a single nav bin. So it essentially becomes a storage unit beneath the level, from a data perspective, of the bin contents. Now, I know that there's some confusion sometimes out there. There are solutions that say that they maintain license plating, and it really isn't. It's more like pick to tote, or on the picking side, it's a tote solution, and that's what we do. We also pick to tote. We'll talk about that one. So differentiate the concept of a license plate from a simple kind of association during the picking process. The license plate stays in existence throughout the entire life, and typically when we get rid of it, we delete the license plate from the system, as opposed to just picking to a tote or something like that, where it's a temporary structure that we use just for a data convenience. And we'll look at the two of those. If license plating is something of interest to you, again, reach out to me afterwards, and we can go in more detail about that. It's actually quite complex to manage the license plate activity inside NAV. But we have added that into NAV warehousing. Okay, so those are the high-level functions and features that we've added. There are additional things that we've added as well, but those are my top 16 list for what we've added into ACE warehousing. So let's talk about the inbound side of activities. So first of all, eReceive. eReceive is actually a product that we created before we did the warehousing piece. It's part of our shipping solution and runs inside the NAV client. Now, I said that we've enabled mobile receiving, and we have, but eReceive, there's still good reasons to use eReceive. It seems like, and maybe this resonates with you, receiving is never perfect. The purchase order is wrong, the quantities are wrong, and there's always reasons, it seems like, to go look at information inside NAV. And so it makes sense to be able to do that with the NAV client. And so eReceive is still our first recommendation for receiving. There's ways to make that mobile by putting it on wheels, but we prefer to use eReceive. If you are a customer that's lucky enough to mostly have purchase orders that are physically processed and received correctly, and your information is barcoded, your products are barcoded on the inbound side, then go ahead and use mobile receiving. And then for those things that fall out of the norm, then you may have to go reconcile those manually using either eReceive or something in the system. But mobile receiving is at least enabled if you fall in that category. The other thing is I mentioned dynamic activities, and a dynamic put away is exactly that. We find that most customers are receiving the goods on pallets. They want to allow the forklift driver to grab a pallet and go put it away. And rather than have to create that activity on the on the NAV client, we create that inside on the handheld device. And so we talk about using a dynamic put away. Also, if I'm not using a pallet type of put away, if I have loose items in the bin and I want to create the put away, again, I know if I'm the worker how much I can physically carry. So it makes sense for me to build up that put away document with what I can physically carry. NAV does allow for what we call an automatic put away to be created when I post a warehouse receipt, and then it can create the put away. But if I have 100 items on that, it's going to create them all as one document without any customization. And all 100 of those items then must be physically put away and registered in the system before I can use those items. And that maybe isn't practical. So for us, the dynamic creation of a put away document is really, really key. And then I mentioned, I jumped ahead actually on the dynamic pallet put away. The difference is I do have a pallet number that I've created during the receiving process, and that pallet number then is scanned and can be used in the put away activity. This is not license plating. This pallet number is only valid for the put away stage. After you get the product put away, then the pallet label distinction goes away. That's different than what license plating is. So there's two options there. And then outbound warehouse requests is another last element of the ACE warehousing solution. It really is the warehouse manager screen. It's what allows me to know what it is I'm supposed to ship, how to ship it, and so on. I'm actually going to skip, because of time, I'm going to skip through that slide. I'm just going to tell you that I'm doing a webinar on the 14th of December, so roughly 2 weeks from today, and we're strictly going to spend an hour on an introduction to outbound warehouse requests. It's really a powerful application, and I can't really do it justice in this short time today. So I'll invite you to that. You can register on our LanhamAssociates.com website, and you can then we'll spend more time on that. We'll see it today. I'll use it to create my picks and shipments, but really join us on that day to learn more about outbound warehouse requests. Because I do want to get in and show you some actual product. So let me transition over to NAV here, and we're working in NAV 2016 today. I'll tell you that NAV, all of our objects for NAV 2017 were released shortly after the official release from Microsoft. I think it takes us about a week or so to do final testing, but everything is available in 2017 if you fall into that category. And I'll also tell you that if you're a current user of ACE Warehousing and you joined us here today to kind of see if there's anything new. There is a new release out. It's version 1.5.05 or 1.50.05, and it includes a significant number of small enhancements and not features, but bug enhancements and fixes that sometimes creep in. And it was a fairly large release from that perspective. Functionally, not a lot in this particular release. Well, we've got one on the drawing board that will include some more functions. Too soon to talk about that at this point because I don't know what's going to make the final list. So, okay, let's start with wireless receiving. And I know that people do want to be able to do that, and so we'll transition over here to the handheld device. Now, you're seeing a live handheld device right here on the right-hand side. This is one that's running in my home wireless network, just like it would be in your environment. So there's nothing here that's not real. I'm doing it in the same way that you would do it. I just have a smaller contained environment. So let's start off with receiving. Now, a word about the menus. Yes, it's text. The ADCS toolkit for Microsoft is a text-based tool. And so the menus then are running on text. Now, we find warehouse managers love it because it's simple, it's easy to use, it's easy to maintain inside Nav. It doesn't have the overhead associated with using a web service or web Windows-based forms. And if you're running on a wide area network, if your server is in Ohio and you're in Indiana, the amount of data that flows back and forth between the handheld device and the database in Ohio, or the server in Ohio, is orders of magnitude smaller than in the Windows environment. So there's a lot of good reasons to use a text-based solution. Yes, I know it's not the prettiest, but there are some really good reasons for sticking with this. And as I say, warehouse managers like it. IT folks tend to not like it as much because it doesn't look pretty, but it works very, very well. So these menus are maintained inside Nav, easy to change. Even users can do it without a development license. You can make changes to the order of menus. The hard part is what happens after I make a choice, but the menus can be maintained. So, okay, let's start off with receiving. I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll do a few transactions on the handheld, and we'll talk about a few. After a while, they all kind of begin to look the same, so you can imagine what they would look like as we talk about them. But in this current version, if I'm receiving on a handheld, I'm going to choose option number 7. And you can see, of course, a list of the inbound documents. I've got purchase orders, transfers, and customer returns. And then there's kind of two choices. If I have a purchase pick ticket that's barcoded, and I can just scan that, then I would choose option number 3 and then scan the barcode on the pick ticket that is associated with, excuse me, the packing list. I'm sorry, not the outbound side, with the packing list associated with the order from our vendor. Now, if it's not barcoded, I can just use the number pad on the handheld device to enter it in. That's just fine. So when I scan things, if I need to enter the keyboard on the keyboard, I can certainly do that. And the way the receiving process works is I just start scanning item numbers. And again, obviously you have to have a barcode for the item in order to receive it. I just begin to scan item numbers for the receiving process. And I scanned the wrong barcode. I thought I had 79,000 on that. Let me look this up here real quick. Oh, 79,100. Okay, okay, so I scanned the first item number, and it wasn't on that purchase order, obviously, so it didn't move along. So my first item is the 79,100, okay? Now, I wanted to show you a lot tracked item on this purchase order, so I created it with a lot number on it, and sure enough, it's asking me to enter the lot number. This, of course, is if you have lot numbers from your vendor, if they provide those to you, so then you would scan the lot number. And if I scan this one right here, then we'll give it a lot number. And then, of course, what is the quantity that I'm receiving? Let's say that I'm only counting in 20, and I'm going to hit the Enter key, okay? Then I would move on to my next item. Now, why would you do it that way? During receiving in base nav, you have a warehouse receipt that's created, and then you register that warehouse receipt or you post it because it's got general ledger impact. and then the goods are available for put away. Well, let's say you're unloading a container, and you want to get goods moving quickly. So you may take things out of the container, floor load them, stack them onto a pallet, whatever, count them, and then do a partial posting on that receipt. So now these can be put away. Maybe it takes a long time to unload the container. Or I've got a customer that is receiving repair parts for tractors, and then they come in by container load from the parent company in Japan. One of these, two of those, four of those, there's not a pallet quantity on this particular container, and it takes a long time for them to reconcile exactly what they're receiving. So they would start working on the container. They'd pull a bunch of stuff off, and then they'd scan it, and then put it onto a pallet and receive that, and then make it available for the next step, which is the put away. So you may want to do that in stages. Now, if that's the case, then the operator then says F3 on his keyboard and registers that document. Now that registration then is what will post the receipt and make that available for put away. In the current release of ACE warehousing, because of the way, because we're backward compatible with older versions of NAV, we still use eReceive to at least post the receipt when we have lot tracking. And there's a technical reason for that, because of item tracking and the way item tracking is posted inside NAV. I don't know the exact ones and zeros reasons for that, but I know that is the case. So we do pull it up here in eReceive, and we will just post it. All you have to do is bring it up in eReceive, and then if you're familiar with eReceive, we can use barcodes, and so I'm going to close that out and post that receipt. That's all that would be required. And now that quantity of goods and that lot number is available for put away. And if we go look here in my bin contents, this is a listing of the inventory that we have in bins. Hopefully this is not new to you. You can see here now that I've got, I received some earlier today, my 79100s. I've got 65 that are waiting to be put away. They're in my receiving area. And if I look over here in my receiving area, I've got 20 of the 5114, which was the barcode that we just scanned for the lot number. And then earlier this morning, I received 40 of the 5118. So these goods are physically in the receiving area of my logical warehouse, and they are also in the physical area as well in the receiving area. It's time for them to get put away into a particular bin. So the next thing would be to process that put away, and I'm not going to continue to receive against that PO. That was all I wanted to show you for that. So now we want to talk about the two put away activities. We have a dynamic movement on option number 5 on our menu, and we have a dynamic pallet move and put away. Well, let's look at what those two are. I mentioned that it's possible to create a pallet ID, not a license plate, but a pallet ID during the receiving process. And I could have printed that. There's support for wireless printing with ACE warehousing, and earlier today I actually did that. And so what we'll do is we're going to scan that pallet ID for some of the product that we received earlier today, so you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to choose option number 6. Imagine I'm a forklift driver, and I drive up to the receiving area, and I'm just going to grab a pallet and then want to put it away. So I do have to say what bin I'm in my receiving zone. If you only have a single bin, we can suppress that, but it is possible to have multiple receiving zones and also multiple receiving bins. If maybe you've got bays that you want to set up, you could do it that way as well. And now notice that it's asking me for a pallet number. It's not asking me for items. It's not asking me for anything other than the pallet ID. So here I would scan my pallet ID, and the one I created earlier today was the pallet ID was RF00012. You can see that, and there's a quantity of 40 items on that pallet. And so, and also because I'm using directed put away through the template that I have set up, it's directing me to put that away into GP007, which I just scanned. Now note, all I did was scan the bin when I got there, so I knew where I was to start with. And I knew which bin I wanted to put it away in because of the directed put away, and I scan that bin when I get there. Now, let's go look over here. And I'm going to refresh. And as I refresh, note the changes. Inside, first of all, in GR001, I only have 20 left of that particular lot number, and I've got 5 of that lot number. So that corresponds to the 25 over here. And then in GP007, I have quite a few lots of that particular item. You can see the various lot numbers there. And that pallet actually contained 2 different lot numbers of that item. Okay. Now, if I look at a different type of screen, I have a pallet bin contents. You'll note on here that I have my bin number, GP007, which is where we just put that. Notice this pallet appears twice. Oh, I didn't put the lot number in. The reason it does is because I've got quantities with 2 lot numbers. And in this screen, it allows me to show the lot number, and so it keeps that distinction. So that you can see here on this particular pallet, in this particular bin, I've got 5114 and 5118. Well, I didn't have to scan that information because the pallet ID, the pallet label, knows about it, and so I didn't have to do those additional scans. So if you're in a lot tracked or a serial tracked environment, there's really good reasons to use this dynamic pallet put away instead of having to rescan each individual item. And here's one of those done in the other method, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here I would choose option number 5. And again, I'm in my arrival bin, 0001. Now here what I'm doing is I'm creating the put away. This is the example of my tractor parts manufacturer. They unload a little bit of the stuff, and they receive it, and then another person's responsibility is to come and put it away. Well, again, maybe he can only carry a little bit. He can't carry as much in the put away activity as they could unload from the container. So what this worker's job is to build up the amount they can put on the pallet jack, and that's exactly what happens in this case. They have a pallet jack with a wire cage on it, and some of these tractor parts are oddly shaped. There's long axle pieces, and then there's small cases of bolts, and so it's a mixed bag of things. So rather than have the system create one giant put away, he's going to scan the information and say what he can carry at this particular time. It's all geared toward being efficient. So okay, so I can see in my receiving area here that I have these 2 items left. That's all I have left in receiving. So for now, we'll scan that part number, the 30071. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't let you see my handheld there. Okay, so there I scan my 30071. Let's assume for a moment that I can only physically carry 5 of those, all right? And then we've got some 79100s, and same thing. I can only physically carry 5 of those. And, of course, this is lot number tracked, so we need to grab the lot number, and the 5 of those is the 5101. So we'll grab that lot number as well. So that's all I can physically carry. I hit my F3 key, and I say create my put away. Create put away, and now if I go in option number 2, I have a put away document that was created just for me, and now this is giving me the option or telling me where to go put this. Now this put away template knows that we want to put this into bulk storage, and so I'm going to put that into my bulk storage. But just to illustrate something, I decided I don't want to put it in bulk storage for whatever reason. I know this needs to get put away into its regular storage bin, so I'm going to override that because I have permission to do that. Scan GP004. Now I scan the item again and the quantity that I'm physically putting into that bin. All right, so that's that one. And then now GP007, we're going to marry this up with the other inventory that's already there, scan my part number again, and now scan my lot number, or quantity, and scan my lot number. So a lot more scanning is required when we're not using that pallet put away, although this may make sense. In your environment, you may need to do it this way. The good news is you have the option. And I hit my F3 key, and of course register, and now the document is registered. And if we refresh base nav here screen again, you can see that we've updated the appropriate bin contents. I've only got the 5 left here of that part. I've reduced the 5 over here, and now the 5101 has been added to GP007. So That's an example of a couple of key elements of ACE warehousing: dynamic activity, being able to use the pallet put away, and a few other elements. So I want to cover a little bit of outbound. I got 5 minutes left. Wow, time goes fast. So let's go into outbound warehouse requests here, and what we want to do is, again, please, on the 14th, if you're interested in outbound warehouse requests, join us, and we'll cover this in great detail. But let's just look at one feature that we've added in. Now, in BaseNav, when you create a pick, if you're using warehousing and it's in a paper-based form, when you create a pick, you basically get one pick per order. That isn't always the most efficient. Sometimes it makes sense to combine orders. Maybe you've got small components and it makes sense to put a group of orders together so you walk around and you pick multiple orders at one time. And that function doesn't exist inside BaseNav. We've added it, and we call it creating a combined pick. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to highlight 2 orders, and I'm going to say create combined pick. Now when I do that, this also does a couple of things for us. It combines this into a single warehouse shipment, which is useful, and we have the single pick document. Now let's see what that looks like on the handheld. And so this is going to tie in actually quite a few elements. This is a combined pick. It's also going to allow me to pick to tote, which is a way of identifying the items so that when I ship them in eShip, I can quickly identify which items I've picked. It's kind of like using that pallet put away on the inbound side, but this is on the outbound side. So this saves me work when it comes time to scanning or rescanning in the shipping solution. So let's go and pick this. Point out a couple of features. So there's a document. All right, so the first thing is to note here is the reference number. This, of course, is the sales order number 1117. We also have 1116, which we're going to get to. So you might be wondering, normally Nav sorts things by source number, and we start with the oldest one first. Well, this is taking advantage of the bin sorting concept inside Nav. I've set up my bins, and you'll see down here that when I create my pick ticket, I have determined that I want to use the bin sorting column to sort my order on my pick ticket, so I'm walking through in the most optimal path, and that's why we're starting with that order number first. So I get there, we'll scan the item number, or scan the bin, of course, and then we scan the item number, and then I'm going to scan a tote number. This assumes that I'm putting it into something that I can identify for shipping, and we'll see the leverage of that in just a second over at on eShip. So I put that into a tote, and now I'm going to my next item. But notice that my order number here has changed. So now I'm going to use a different tote to put that into, but I'm going to GP007, and I'm going to scan my item number, which is 7910. Oops, wrong part number. Oh, I created those wrong this morning. So let's go with 79010 on the keyboard, okay? Now, because this is a different order, I need to associate that with a different tote. So I'm putting into a different tote. I'm going to call that 2. Now, the other order, 1117, also had this item on it. So I scan again, and I'm going to have to use the keyboard for that because I didn't print my barcode properly. Now, because it already knows that I've picked something for this, it does present the tote number to me. So I can consolidate those and put those into that same tote. And it's option 2 there. Now the last item is the GP008. We'll scan that. And 79011. I typed in my barcodes wrong this morning. And we're going to put that one into a different tote because it doesn't fit. We filled the other tote with that item. And so now we are done with those particular 2 orders, and we deliver them over to shipping when we transition over to eShip. Now I've got 1 minute left. Bear with me, probably take about 3 more minutes, and so I'll run just a smidgen long so we can show you how that tote ID is leveraged over in eShip. But first let me register this, option number 2, and now that document has been registered. And if we look over here in Outbound Warehouse Request and refresh, you can see here now that the pick number that we had has fallen off, so we know those are registered. This is also a tool for the warehouse manager. Okay, let me do this here, and this is an example of one of our customers, and kind of an illustration of that tote ID process. So the barcode that I was scanning could be this barcode right down here. The goods were physically into this tote and then delivered over to shipping. So on one order we had this circumstance. Both items that we needed fit into that one plastic tote. On the other order, though, we might have two totes because they physically couldn't fit inside. And so the question then becomes, in a fully paperless environment, when this order gets to him to pack and ship with eShip, how does he know which order he's shipping? We don't have a pick ticket, so we don't indicate that. And that's where the tote ID gets leveraged. So let's go into eShip here, packline scanning, as you know, and I'm going to do exactly what he just did. I'm going to scan a tote number. And when I scan that tote number, notice it retrieves my order number, 1116. And this particular order, we had two totes. And so the command that I need to scan is which tote am I shipping? Well, I just scanned 14, so we'll pick that one. Now let's also assume that even though it wouldn't fit into the same physical box or the same physical totes, we can put these all into one shipping container. So right now I'm not going to close this one out. I'll do the next process, which is to not close that package. I'm going to do another select tote, and we'll grab, oh no, I do close this package out. It's going into two. And now I do another select tote and grab the remaining, and this then is actually going into two boxes. So I don't have to rescan the items that I'm putting into that box, okay? But there's another way that we can go completely paperless. If you do want to rescan, if you are kind of in the control mode, you can just start off by scanning the tote ID. Now instead of using that select tote command that I just used, I'm going to just itemize again what's in that order, and I would do that by entering in the part numbers that I shipped. And I believe we had a 79010. Again, I made a mistake on the barcodes. So now I'm packing one of those in a box, and so on. So now I complete the shipping portion of that. So I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to take too much of my overtime. But I hope you saw at least a little bit of the wireless functionality. Again, after a while, it begins to look a lot similar. And the intention here today was to do an introduction to what ACE warehousing is as compared to ADCS, which is the core Microsoft product. If we've sparked your interest, please reach out and contact me. Let me change back over to PowerPoint, and we can get my email address. My email address is not there. So it's jima@lanhamassociates.com. And if you've got additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just make sure you include your Innovia partner contact in there as well, so that we all stay on the same page as far as questions that are being answered. And Abby, thanks for the time today. Sorry for running a little long. This is a big subject, and I tried to edit it down as best I could to fit inside the hour, and it's still a lot to try and get accomplished in the single hour. So again, thank you very much for attending today, and hopefully we'll see you on the 14th for the additional information. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Jim, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone at our next webinar and joining Lanham for their webinar as well.